Good morning, Jack.
And guess what? We've got a guest on the line. Kim Burns is on the line. Kim, you there?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing well, Kim.
Not too bad.
Kim is a member of the Maryland Business for Responsive Government, and she's with us here to talk a little bit about how the wind blows.
And is it blowing today?
I'm sitting under a fan as we speak.
Well, we certainly had a lot of wind here in the last 36 hours here in Ocean City, so a lot of people may be saying, boy, I wish we had a wind farm out there. We would be producing a lot of power. And from what I understand, wind power is being talked about in the Maryland General Assembly.
It is. It's a huge issue, and it's actually with less than a week to go in the session. Both the House and the Senate are discussing the issue quite vigorously in their subcommittees, and I think it's a real problem for the second floor that issue hasn't risen yet to the level of an actual committee vote. With less than a week to go, I think that presents some real challenges for a major initiative of the governor.
And Kim, this is really being pushed by the governor, right?
It is the governor's initiative, yes.
And I asked this yesterday. We had on Mike McDermott, who's our delegate here in 38B, and I think he's on your side. You know, in fact, I know he's on your side. He doesn't like it. What is the point of it from the governor's standpoint and the supporter's standpoint? Why do they think this is such a great thing?
They think that it introduces a new type of energy, that it puts Maryland in front and center in the offshore wind race, that it provides a significant renewable energy resource to the state. They say over time, and it provides some certainty in costs. The opponents, on the other hand, say the costs are far from certain. Maryland shouldn't be in a race to win an offshore wind race, that Maryland should do what's in the best interest of Maryland and implement a responsible energy policy. And maybe that policy isn't state by state by state. Maybe that policy is regional. And there's just not enough time for the legislature to get its hands on what's the most responsible way to look at creating a new renewable energy portfolio for the state of Maryland in the long term.
Well, Kim, a race indicates the beginning, the starting line, and the ending line. Do we know where this thing is going to end? Is there any reason for this kind of a race?
You really don't, and frankly, I think the word race is a total mischaracterization of what we're in. What we should be in is the business of responsible energy, creating a responsible renewable energy portfolio, and looking at what approach is the best for Maryland, best for our region, the best for our country, given the economics of the situation and the availability of other substitutes in the marketplace.
What about the productivity and the lack of thereof on a regular basis? We don't know when the wind is going to be blowing. We'd have no control over when the wind is going to be blowing unless we are controlling the rotation of the earth in some manufactured way. And I don't understand the emphasis on wind.
Well, there's going to be wind.
It's going to be,
I guess.
But basically, you can't control it. The seafaring industry no longer exists as a seafaring industry under sail because the wind is erratic.
Correct.
And that would seem to be a clue somewhere along the line. How much? What are the percentages of this wind farm, if you will, creating enough energy to run businesses?
Well, the wind has to blow just right. You're absolutely correct in order for this whole thing to work. And there's a certain range. I'm not an expert in wind farming, but there is a certain range between, kind of an optimum range between which the wind turbines are most efficiently operating. And, the myth that these wind turbines will solve an energy crisis or replace energy needs is kind of false, because you do need backup systems to complement or substitute when the wind isn't at that level, or when the demand is greater than the supply.
Well, Mike McDermott yesterday introduced us to a plan that he thinks it might be fairly decent, which is the individual farmers using individual units on their farms, which are away from trees and those kind of things, which will catch the wind on an area here on the Eastern Shore where the wind does blow, and using that to take some of the impact off the farmer and also take him off the grid quite a bit.
Certainly, individual behavior is an option. It's certainly better than government subsidies and tax breaks for a questionable technology, and it gives the person who's taking the risk the opportunity to absorb the risk and also benefit from the innovation. I think there's a real question about whether or not there should be government interference in what should be a free market, and whether or not the government should be subsidizing that through, subsidies and tax breaks. And it shifts the cost to the consumer, every consumer, over time. And, there's just a real question on whether the government should be in the market, consumers should pay that, or whether it should be up to the individual farmer or individual to implement that type of energy if they choose.
Kim, it's very interesting to read up about your group, the Maryland Business for Responsive Government, and that this issue, as is with your group, is really a non-partisan group. I mean, we're not talking about Republican against Democrat. What this group is trying to do is to create an atmosphere, a culture for business to grow, and that, of course, means for jobs to grow. And it's impressive, some of the people that you have on with your group, supporting your group. I don't know if you want to tell folks who some of those people are.
Maryland Business for Response. I'm a Democrat, first of all, and we are nonpartisan. We have two Republican co-chairmen. One is former Governor Marvin Mandel, and one is former ambassador / delegate / gubernatorial candidate Ellen Sauerbray. We have a number of big variety of business interests across the state, and the purpose of our group is not to advocate so much in Annapolis as it is to reach out and inform and educate the business community and other constituencies about policies like this, and really allow them to make an informed decision and encourage them and their groups and their affiliations to reach out to the legislators as they learn about particular issues like this, that are subject to arguments on both sides.
And what does it, Kim, and given that background, what does that mean, you think, for business and consumers as a whole, this whole wind farm plan? One of the proposals in Annapolis has to do with studying. I think it's in the Senate Finance Committee, as opposed to moving forward with something right now, studying this issue, getting a better handle on it. I mean, there are costs that are greater in this whole issue than just a $2 fee. I mean, there are environmental costs, there are predictability costs, there are quality issues, and I think, you're talking about a place like Ocean City, Maryland, where it's the number one tourist spot in the state, and you really need to take a hard look at preserving that quality of life and what something like this is going to do to that. You've got lights on top of these things, you've got noise pollution, you've just got a whole bevy of issues that really need to be thoroughly vetted before it falls to the politics of today. You really got to look at it and its impact on Ocean City as a family resort town tomorrow. And that's what our group tries to do. And Kim, this technology is a very expensive one, and particularly when you go offshore 10 to 12 miles like they're saying here. And I think it's a little bit, worrisome to hear the governor saying, it's not going to cost the ratepayers that much. It's, it's like going to be $2 a month or whatever. But somebody's got to pay for this. And the company's not going to do it and lose money on it. So if it's only costing people $2 a month, which I happen to believe that it won't, I think it's going to be a lot more. I mean, somebody else is going to be paying for this, and I'm not quite sure who that is.
Well, I think it's a combination of ratepayers and taxpayers, and government subsidies and tax breaks that reduce the cost of these wind turbines to the companies that put them in. And this $2 fee that they're talking about, I mean, they're huge maintenance costs. There's de-icing costs. There's bug removal. I mean, there's just huge maintenance costs associated with these turbines once they go up. And I sincerely doubt that $2 is going to cover it either. And frankly, I don't think we've been through this before with deregulation in this state, and I don't think this should be one of those trust me type situations. Right. I think they have to get control over the costs associated with this before they do it.
Yeah, and this is the furthest thing from deregulation, when you're basically picking one company to do it.
That's correct. That's right.
And I also heard rumors that somebody who heads that company might be very close to the governor.
I've heard that as well. We tend to stick to the policy arguments.
Yeah, I know, right? You're not going down that road today.
I'm staying on the sidewalk.
But that was interesting. Which you introduced something that I hadn't thought about. We often talk about this. What would happen with birds and everything, but the insect cleaning really, we don't know how far out a lot of the. I'm not going to say animal life, but there is life out there in the form of insects and other types of life at sea. That are we really prepared for this? Has anybody tested this?
There have been some countries in Europe that have tested this, and they found actually that bugs pose a huge maintenance cost in maintaining these windmills. They also find that lightning and hurricanes, because of the damage that they can do, and ice too, lightning, hurricanes, and ice can also affect, the maintenance requirements and the costs associated with maintaining these windmills. So, there's a lot to consider, and this is just not something you really, it's not something you necessarily want to rush through, with 5 days left in the legislature, because the impact on Maryland's number one tourist spot is very real and very significant in a lot of ways that need to be thought out before this is implemented.
And you're talking about hurricanes, but we experience here in Ocean City much more of the nor'easters than we do the hurricanes. And how much that wind damage is going to put these windmills offline?
That's a good question, and the way these windmills are designed, after a certain, wind speed, from what I understand, they actually stop operating, and you have to go to the backup system.
That's correct, yeah.
So it's not like nor'easters and excessive wind will produce excessive electricity. That's not the case.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Actually, it's the opposite. And, the interesting about this, Kim, and I know you don't want to get into the tech part of it, but my understanding is that you get about 37% efficiency from these things based upon the variations in wind and that sort of thing. So when they say they have a gigawatt or megawatt, whatever size it is, you really have to look at 35 to 37% of that.
That's right. And they anticipate that it will fill about 3%, of 3% of the state's energy needs.
There's a discipline in business called cost-benefit analysis. I don't think this has really been done here.
I think that would be right, and frankly, I think with 5 days to go, whether or not they can do it thoroughly enough to meet the demands of the voters remains is doubtful at best.
Now, you're very close to what goes on, in Annapolis. We're close here. We know that Mike McDermott will vote against it. I think that Norm Conway and in the Senate, Jim Mathias are for it. What is the mood there in Annapolis? If you had a guess or had a bet, do you think that this is going to go through, get passed?
Depends on how much pressure the second floor puts on the issue. I think that I'm hopeful that wisdom will prevail on this and it will be further studied. I think there are just too many ifs and too many unresolved issues to have it go further. And I think we've been down this road with some other technologies before. I don't think there should be a rush to market on this, and I think that Maryland really needs, we have the benefit of Delaware that's doing it. We have the benefit of a possible regional approach to this thing, which could generate even more electricity. Just a lot of things that need to be looked at before the state moves forward.
What should the average citizen do? Besides finding out more about this, at this point, is it still worth it to call your delegate and your senator?
Absolutely. I can't advocate for, we don't advocate for or against an issue. If I were the average citizen, I think I'd learn as much as I could about this issue, figure out whether or not you think it's something that Ocean City needs. Do your own cost-benefit analysis, and then talk to your legislator. But time is short.
And Kim, if people need to find out more about the info, or to get more of the info, where's the best place to go?
I rely on a website that is called aweo.org.
And that'll give you the information that you need.
Yes, it will.
Kim Burns, thanks for being with us today.
Have a great day.
The same to you now.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.